So good afternoon. I have printed some materials too. It's just one page. It's the text that I'm going to work upon. So if you don't mind, I will sit. So the theme of my paper is the just war theory, or the concept of just war, as it appears in the light of the conflict in Ukraine, or Russian aggression against Ukraine, and the base, the core of my talk will be to look upon the document that contains the base of the social teaching of Russian Orthodox Church, and try to elaborate what impact it does have or does not have upon the actual situation, and of course upon the Russian Church, Russian Orthodox believers, and so on. So, but let me start with a very brief introduction about the concept of just war. Of course, it's rather old and has roots that we do not need to follow at this moment. But what is useful to be said is that this concept traditionally has two or now three aspects. Use ad bellum, it contains when it is permissible to wage a war, to go into the war. The use in bello, it covers rules of conduct when waging a war, and use post bellum, so when and how it is moral to end a war. It contains questions such as political and economic reconstruction, reparations, punishment of war crimes, and it also can be described as a just peace that adds to just war theory. Of course, this third aspect is very hotly debated, especially also in the Czech Republic, where last year was published a petition, Peace and Justice in Ukraine, that sparked hot debate, violent debates, or not violent, but lively debates. And it shows that these questions that concern the potential, of course now the potential ending of the war, and peace terms are very, very actual, and we will come back to them later. Of course, what needs to be said as the second point in the introduction is that in the Orthodoxy it has not developed its own conception of, or concept of, just war, and as we will see, it was borrowed, or it was used from the Western Christian sources. But it doesn't mean that there were not similar thoughts, but the concept as it is itself was not developed. But it doesn't mean that it's absent, and that's what we will look upon right now. So the document basis of the social concept of the Russian Orthodox Church is from the year 2000. So it means it was elaborated before the advent, or before coming both of Vladimir Putin and Patriarch Kirill. So it was chiefly prepared in the 1990s. And of course, it, as such compendiums of social teaching usually do, it covers the broad range of themes. And one chapter is specifically devoted to war and peace, and the bulk of it is dealing with the just war concept, as we will see. But first, let us dwell a while in other parts of this document that elaborate on the notion of church and state, and nationalism and patriotism, that may also be of interest according to our theme. So, the first paragraph, or the first passage that I will use: the patriotism of the Orthodox Christian should be active. It is manifested when he defends his fatherland against an enemy, works for the good of the motherland, cares for the good order of people's life through, among other things, participation in the affairs of government. The Christian is called to preserve and develop national culture and people's self-awareness. So it calls to active participation of Christians, of believers. That includes the participation in the conflict when they defend their land, their fatherland or motherland, both used against an enemy. So this is, of course, all general, but from this we can somehow get to the actual cult of martyrs who die for fatherland. As Patriarch Kirill said, as you know, that to die in military duty in Ukraine washes all sins of the soldiers. But still in these preliminary parts, we can find different strains of thought, different thoughts. The second one, it is contrary to Orthodox ethics to divide nations into the best and the worst, and to belittle any ethnic or civic nation. Even more contrary to orthodoxy are the teachings which put the nation in the place of God or reduce faith to one of the aspects of national self-awareness. So this is a clear demonstration that nationalism is not the same as patriotism, and that even in this negative form that belittles, denigrates other nations, it's contrary to Orthodox teaching, to Orthodox faith. So I think this is first of the very important points that we should think about, that we will come back later to it. It's a very important point, but it precedes the chapter about the just war. It's still in the part devoted to the church and state. Although the church cooperates with the state in many areas, as is also the tradition of the Orthodox Church from Byzantine times, it cannot support the state if it is, another quotation, waging civil war or aggressive external war. So, in such condition, the church cannot support the state, although in many other situations, in all other situations, it's cooperating with the state. So, let us move to the heart of the matter, to the just war concept. We find it in the chapter 8 of the document under the heading War and Peace. And this concept of just war is here contained with explicit recognition that it is borrowed from Western Christian thinkers, as we will see. But we'll start, this chapter starts with the clear condemnation of war. War is evil, just as the evil in man in general. War is caused by the sinful abuse of the God-given freedom. So this is the general condemnation of war that sets the tone for the whole, for the rest of the document. But while recognizing war as evil, the Church does not prohibit her children from participating in hostilities if at stake is the security of their neighbors and the restoration of trampled justice. Then war is considered to be necessary, though undesirable, means. So, war is evil, but there are certain situations when it is necessary, though it's always undesirable, it's always negative in its outcomes. Now we are directly in the chapter or in the passage dealing with the just war. From the Christian perspective, the conception of moral justice in international relations should be based on the following basic principles: love of one's neighbors, people and fatherland, understanding of the needs of other nations, conviction that it is impossible to serve one's country by immoral means. In defining just war, the Western Christian tradition, which goes back to St. Augustine, usually puts forward a number of conditions on which war in one's own or others' territory is admissible. And these are very concrete points that we'll come back later on. So war is declared for the restoration of justice, War is declared only by the legitimate authority. Force is used not by individuals or groups, but by representatives of the civil authorities established from above. War is declared only after all peaceful means have been used to negotiate with the opposite party and to restore the prior situation. War is declared only if there are well-grounded expectations that the established goals will be achieved. The planned military losses and destruction will correspond to the situation and the purposes of war, which means the principle of proportionate means. During war, civilians will be protected against direct hostilities, and war may be justified only by the desire to restore law and order. So these are the points that the conditions under which war can be justified. Among obvious signs pointing to the equity or inequity of a warring party are its war methods and attitude towards its war prisoners and the civilians of the opposite side, especially children, women, and elderly. It's very clearly and concretely elaborated one point of this list. Of course, what's repeated again here, the church has a special concern for the military, trying to educate them for the faithfulness to lofty moral ideals. So it should be present in the military area, so to say. And the last but not least point, the church also opposes the propaganda of war and violence, as well as various manifestations of hatred capable of provoking fratricidal clashes. So this, of course, as is quite clear, is well applicable to the official state propaganda. So, and in the next part, we will go to some of these concrete points and make a sort of weighing them in the mirror, on the face of the situation in Ukraine, or the war in Ukraine. So the first point, war is declared for the restoration of justice. Of course, this poses a question: was there a situation of injustice that would justify the military invasion? Obviously, the Russian official Russian interpretation is that it was just this case, and that the oppression of Russian-speaking inhabitants in eastern parts of Ukraine was exactly this concrete injustice. Without going to details in this, we can state one thing, and that is that the war obviously did not solve these tensions and these problems, but nor restore justice, but quite on the contrary. War is declared only by the legitimate authority. Of course, the war, or officially speaking, special military operation, was declared by official or officially recognized, internationally recognized Russian state authority. But if we go one step further, we can ask if any, and now we are not talking about Russia only, if any state authority remains legitimate when it is waging wars, when it's using illegitimate means to reach any of its goals. So this is a big question mark. Force is used not by individuals or groups, but by representatives of the civil authority. This is also very interesting in the Ukraine context, because we have witnessed the prominent role of the private military group Wagner by Yevgeny Prigozhin. That's in fact something like a private army of Vladimir Putin, but it's not a part of an official military system. Somehow similar may be the situation of the Kadyrovtsi, of the private army of the Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov, although this officially operates as a part of the Russian National Guard, not the Russian regular army. So even in this point that should be quite clear, there is a big problem with this war. War is declared only after all peaceful means have been used to negotiate with the opposite party and to restore the prior situation. of course, as we know that since 2014, when the war in fact began by annexation of Crimea and creation of the separatist Donbass republics, there has been a series of negotiations and peace talks that ultimately failed. And we may, of course, ask, was this failure inevitable? And all who are using this or should use this document or this conception, should ask this question: was it inevitable, and what was the role of our government in this? Another point: war is declared only if there are well-grounded expectations that the established goals will be achieved. Here is again the crucial question: what was actually the goal, the purpose of the war? Was it the big goal of denazification, so-called, of Ukraine, of toppling the existing regime in Kiev, even conquering the whole of the country? Or was the real goal more modest? Was it just the protection of Russian-speaking inhabitants? In fact means the annexation of the eastern regions that was only veiled by the big words about the change of the Nazi regime and so on. The purpose or the goal of the war was never clearly stated. It was left in the fog, and it's also from the it should be also taken as the direct contrary to these points and to the church teaching. During war, civilians will be protected against direct hostilities. That's quite and brutally clear. It's not true. We have seen many civil casualties so far, and still more are adding, unfortunately. So there's no need to say something more to it. And to this we may of course add another point that was mentioned before. That's not among these conditions of just war. It is contrary to Orthodox ethics to divide nations into the best and the worst, and to belittle any ethnic or civic nation. Of course, this is exactly what's happening to the Ukrainian nation in the official Russian propaganda. In some parts of it, that's really is close to denigration or refusal to accept the Ukrainian nation, or equating it with Nazism. So this is really something that goes directly to the very clear wording of this document. Excuse me, I must drink a little bit. So we are closing to the conclusion. I think we may sum up that the social teaching of the Russian Orthodox Church that includes a concept of just war that is quite clear in its consequences, and in fact it condemns the current Russian aggression against Ukraine. On the other hand, there are some other motives in the same body of teaching or in the same document that can support the war if it is interpreted as a defensive war against external enemy, against the allegedly Nazi Ukrainian regime with its Western allies, or the powerful almighty West itself. And in this, that is threatening to annihilate the whole national existence of the Russian motherland. So in fact, if this interpretation is used by the regime, then of course now we are not judging if it's judging the righteousness of it, but still it means that there is some twisted way of using this teaching that can even count with this, but it's twisted way that's necessary to be said. The title of this colloquium is the misuse of religion, and of course it can have different forms. It can have forms of using some harmful concepts, but also of not using some potential that is present in the traditions of the religion in question. In this case, we can say that the official teaching of the Russian Orthodox Church, because we are dealing really with the official document that stated that it's an official document that should be taken seriously, that should be applied, and that should be also used by all the church members, all the believers. So it's a serious thing. So the official teaching of Russian Orthodox Church offers a base for clear refusal of the aggressive war against Ukraine. But of course the question is it used by church representatives, by church members? As we know, the church officials, in the first place with Patriarch of Moscow, Kirill, verbally denounce the war as the fratricidal war and pray for its end, but at the same time support the claim that the war is in fact justified, it's in fact just, because it is a defense against a spiritual enemy, against decadent West. It's a holy war of a kind, a sort of a Orthodox Christian jihad. But of course, these are not the only voices. There are opposing voices among the Orthodox clergy, among Orthodox priests, deacons, laypersons, that are unfortunately often silenced, and they faced persecution. It's interesting that the various protesting voices that I've been able to look upon, they use very often clear biblical quotations that are condemning the killing, but they never use the concept of just war itself. In the open letter protesting against the war that was signed or published on the 1st March of the last year, so far has been signed by about 300 Orthodox priests, clerics, in 2 months after its publication. There is no mention about the just war, but of course the war and violence are clearly and simply condemned, refused. So probably the concept of just war is more academic, it has relevance for academic debate, but it's not very useful for situations when someone who's opposing the war and faces serious personal problems, persecutions, wants to express his or her opinion. So he uses another argumentation. But it doesn't mean that the just war concept is not applicable to this critique, to this situation. And of course, what is maybe the last point that I would like to add, I started with these three aspects of just war. The last of them is the just peace, or jus post bellum. Of course, these questions are seriously discussed, and they will be all the time, about what would be the just solution for the situation that we hope will come with the ending of this unjust war. So I don't know if I have some time, but I'm finished. Thank you.